So my program is called Where the Rivers Meet, and it's a program designed to work with junior and senior high school age kids, so between the ages of 12 to 18, and to work about like raising awareness of like homophobia and transphobia in schools, and especially like within Indigenous communities and how that impacts of colonialism have impacted that. The program's learning objectives are to raise awareness about how like we're never just one identity and how like for example me, I'm both trans and indigenous. Come from Kainai First Nation and Fort McKay First Nation, so like there can be multiple identities, and that's hopefully what I hope to bring towards these little ones moving forward. The aim of the program is more like diversity and equity awareness, so like bringing awareness of like LGBTQ identities, like and especially like around also focusing with the communities where they're at as well. So like using lots of like local land-based pedagogy and stuff like that. It's a healing journey for the students because it's more, I guess, we don't come into the classroom like we're being teachers. Like yes, we're still learning too. Like especially like me being a trans and indigenous person, like when I'm looking around for role models out in the world, like there's not a lot to look for very often because like from one side of the indigenous side of things, like my role models have mostly, especially since my I come from a family of residential school survivors, so they're still healing and they're still working on that at the same time that so they're not particularly able to give me as much guidance as I would like, as well as from the LGBTQ side of things. There's like the discrimination that's currently going on with like the kids, like out in the world where folks are like homophobic or transphobic or like policing what bathrooms you have to use and stuff like that, and also from like the standpoint of role models, like the HIV and AIDS crisis knocked out like at least two generations. And so like we're doing this and we're figuring this out as we go at the same time. And all we're trying to do is like kind of like let the students know that we're both teachers and learners and we're still like working through this together, and this isn't something that we really can measure, especially as educators and as like I'm not a traditional like teacher trained person, but like when we go out into the world, when we often like bring our workshops and bring our like presentation, or even like say a teacher goes in and teaches a class, like we don't know the impacts, like oftentimes it's throwing this information into the void because like no, we don't get a lot of like instant feedback like that. It's more like years down the road, I might run into a person like when I'm out getting coffee or something, they'll be like, "Oh my goodness, you saved my life. Thank you so much for doing this." And it's like, I think that's when you can start seeing the like the little parts, and like even like when you where you're starting to see like folks like be more excited about doing stuff. Like for example, just this year, the Aboriginal Student Services Center like had like genderbread Bannock people out at their place, which was like when I first came to university here was never a thing. And then like these are like little, I don't know how to describe it, but like just like little moments, and that's when you notice that like things are going right and that things are like excelling in Indigenous. Like I wouldn't say that's like any specific like, oh, this initiative is like doing really good. It's more like how can we work together, because like where there was me to like, well, we're trying the best that we can, but we can't do this alone. Like there needs to be like other folks, like our friends at like Aboriginal Teachers Education Program and like out at the Pride Center. Like we're all like have our own part to the safety net sort of, and we all have to like work together to be able to do that. From my perspective, Indigenous education historically it would have been like learning on the land and stuff like that, but now it's like there's this activity that we like to do in our workshops where it's like the first circle is like the roles that we traditionally held before colonization. And although those roles are important, like hunter gatherers, head people, like medicine people, elders, like knowledge keepers, like all of these roles that like went into like helping support a children, like children at the center. And as much as we would like to, I don't think we can go back there now. Like this building is here and like the cities are here and like infrastructure in Canada is moving forward regardless of that. Honoring the past, but also looking towards the future and looking how we can like adapt and use like what we can to like best serve our folks, like while still keeping that connection to the land and still keeping like those traditional protocols and laws and natural like teachings, like still holding them as close as we can, but still like looking forward to see how maybe technology can advance that, or maybe how like, for example, like Tribe Called Red and stuff like that. Like there's like these little examples of like how we're like adapting and moving, and I think that's what it is. I hope that like my program will like inspire other folks to like move forward and to like make what change that they have in like the little pockets that they are in the world, and that like young folks will find their power and find like their voice and be able to like speak up and hold other folks accountable while still like, you know, hmm, I don't know. It's like, I guess like the reason I started this whole program a long time ago was that I think it was my elder up north, Billy Joe Tucker from like Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, and he told me, he's like, when you go forward in this, go forward by being the person that you needed when you were their age. More of a commitment, not just from like indigenous side of things, but also like from the settler side of things and folks from that side. Like we're all in this together. Like they're not the folks that are here still here, and like seeing what they could do. Like one example that I gave to like my coworkers that I work with is like, hey, you all were born here, so like Google, like take some time, like look at your own like what territory you're raised on, like learn a little bit about those folks, and then learn like what something you can do with your life. And I guess like information, materials and resources, like we need to like find our history more, because like when we're looking like, when I was first like doing the research for this, when I was googling like who out in the world was doing this kind of work, there was a few but not many, and the few that were out there were at capacity doing as much as possible that they could catch as many folks as they could. And I think if everyone, even within like their little corner of the world, could like look and see how they could like support